talk to you guys a little bit about personal brand and self-identity. I'm 65 years old. My birthday is next week. So I have had a long time to consider this and look at this and see how that's played out in my life and sort of have a track record. And I wanted to share that with you. So personal brand is something that you may have some control over, you may not have some control over, but it's what other people think of you. I've been thought of in a lot of different ways. Growing up, my best friends called me Samp. My family called me Junior. The teachers called me Lawrence. And I've evolved to coach at St. Stephen's at one point. Now I'm Mr. Sampleton at St. Stephen's. So a lot of different ways to think about one person. Self-identity is a lot of what you think about yourself and how you wake up every morning and view yourself as you approach the world. So I'm going to give you a little history in terms of my life and what I've gone through and how I got to where I am now. So what you're looking at on the screen right now is a place called Welder, Texas. That's where I spent the first 12 years of my life. I was born there. A lot of my family was there. Welder, Texas is a town of about 1,000 people. And most of the people there are farmers, they're domestic servants, workers. I didn't grow up around a lot of doctors, lawyers, business people, entrepreneurs, and people like that. So in my community, there were just a lot of people who worked really hard. This photo here shows you that there's one blinking light, a caution light in this city. And the water tower, that's the highest building in the city or the highest structure in the city. So you can see the water tower from all over the city. And I should probably call it town because it's not really a city. I went to elementary school there, and I had some positive experiences in Welder. My principal, Mr. Quillian, I still remember his name, encouraged me to play the trombone. My first grade teacher encouraged me to be kind. I was always bigger than most of the students, so I think she wanted to really make sure I was a good guy. So she encouraged me to be kind to others and think about things before I really reacted to things. There were some challenges growing up in Welder as well. So I was born there in 1959. I left there in the early 70s. So Welder still had a lot of things in place that reflected Jim Crow laws and different things like that. So when I went to order my hamburger in Welder from the local cafe, I went in the back door of the cafe to order my hamburger. Of course, I got the freshest meat, I got the best lettuce, the best tomatoes, because the people who worked in the kitchen of this cafe were actually people who were from my church, and I knew them. So I got the best food, although I entered the back door to get it. I couldn't go in the front door during that time. There were other challenges growing up in Welder, but that sort of sets the scene for my first 12 years of my life. So I moved to Seguin, Texas, when I was in 6th grade. 25,000 people in Seguin. I thought I died and gone to heaven. It was a big city for me with a lot of opportunities to do things like play sports. Football was one of the things that I played at St. Stephen at Seguin, but I did not play in Welder because they didn't have football. It was such a small town, they didn't have a sport like that. So Seguin, I continued to grow up in the church. I was baptized in Welder before I moved to Seguin. One of the things that my parents required of us with that was that we had to go to Sunday school, we had to go to church on Sunday before we could do anything else during the week. So if you wanted to go swimming, if you wanted to go play at the park, and if you didn't go to Sunday school, if you didn't go to church, then you couldn't do those things. So a real instrumental part of my development was being in the church, which really played into thinking outside of yourself, being humble, and all of those things. I became a star football player at Seguin High School. I made All-American. I was recruited by colleges from all over the United States, some of the major schools, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Ohio State. Lots of schools recruited me to come and play football. So I'm beginning to develop this identity and this self-image of myself as an athlete. I was probably an average to below average student, but I was way above average in terms of being an athlete and participating in sports. And I also participated in things like fine arts. I was in the Fine Arts Club. I was in a couple of plays. I was in Huck Finn. I played the minister. So that was a lot of fun for me. I really enjoyed doing those things. As you can see, my self-identity began to focus more on things like this. My brand, which I wasn't thinking about that then, but you guys, today, you have to start thinking about your personal brand like early on in your life, because you're posting things, you have Instagram accounts and different things like that, so you have to really be careful. Not so much with me during that time because my stuff wasn't as public, but I was creating a brand for myself anyway. And the reason I say that is because there were so many people talking to me about different things, and I wanted to make sure that whenever I had an opportunity to talk to the press or anyone else, I really did a good job with that and wanted that to be, I wanted that to come off really well. So Seguin was a transitional time for me. I went to the University of Texas. This gentleman in the center of the photo here was our head coach. His name was Fred Akers. And he really talked a lot about your brand, your self-image. He didn't say it that way, but he wanted us to represent the university well. He wanted us to represent our families well. He wanted us to be the best we could possibly be on the football field as a team and as individuals. So he did some things with us that I thought were really interesting. Number one, he brought in an expert by the name of Lou Tice. And this guy came in and we sat in a room very similar to this, and we closed our eyes and we visualized our life. We visualized playing football. We visualized what it would be like to play in a big game. Lots of visualization, lots of positive influence. During this time, still I had some challenges. While I was at the University of Texas, being this big superstar on the football field, academically, it was a really tough situation for me. I didn't do a very good job of playing football at a very high level and performing in the classroom at a very high level. I worked hard at both, but of course I excelled in one more than the other. So that was a constant challenge for me, constantly feeding into my self-image while I was at the University of Texas. And most people, when you look at my image and you look at my, my brand, they felt like this guy has it all. You know, he's on the news, he's in the papers, people are reading about him. 50,000 undergrads at UT, and most of them knew who I was when I walked around campus. So that was a challenge for me in terms of the things I did outside of football, but within the football realm, it was really a lot of fun. I got a lot of self-gratification from that. And I put this shot in here because of one thing. This really begins to feed into what I call your personal brand. So this is a game that was broadcast on CBS, NBC, and my name was probably called 5 or 6 times during this football game. And if you think about the marketing power of having your name called during a broadcast, most corporations spend, I don't know, millions of dollars to buy 30-second ads for these broadcasts. So I realized early on that this really meant a lot in terms of getting my name out there, my brand out there. And so I began to think about that. And I began to think that if I use that when I'm being interviewed to really present myself in a way that would allow me to be marketable, I thought that was something that was really special. I get drafted to go to the NFL. I have influencers, I have challenges in the NFL as well. You're looking at my rookie card on my left, your right. And this guy right here was probably on top of the moon. When I took that photo, I was at my best place in terms of athletics. I started playing football when I moved to Seguin at the boys club, and then I ended up being the first tight end drafted in the 1982 draft to play for the Philadelphia Eagles. Amazing accomplishment athletically. So I began to think about my self-image, and I thought my brand was pretty special then because it was, you know, in the spotlight. I was on an NFL team. I was a rookie. I was in a major city. There was probably more people that lived on the block where I lived in Philadelphia than were in Welder, Texas, where I started. So that's pretty interesting for me to make that transition. So challenges that came along with this. You have people who gravitate towards athletes, toward people who are popular, toward millionaires, whatever. And you begin to think, how do I deal with this? It's a lot to deal with people coming to you thinking you have a lot of money, thinking you're always partying, thinking you're doing all of these things and they want to be a part of it. So those were some challenges for me. Going into the NFL was a challenge in and of itself. Now I'm in a position where I'm not at Seguin High School where I'm better than most people playing. I'm in a position where everybody is as good as I am. There are certain expectations with people being in this position. You know, you have to drive a certain car, you have to live in a certain house. So you spend money and economically it turns out not to be a good thing for you. So I transitioned from the NFL after 4 years. And within 3 years after I retired, I got married. And so during that time period, the economic part of my life was hemorrhaging somewhat. When I retired from the NFL, I didn't realize economically I had to pay the IRS all of this money. And so the IRS wanted to talk to me about money that I owed them. So there was a transition there. And the other thing was I hadn't graduated from college yet. So I went back to school. I graduated from college. And within 3 years after I retired from the NFL, I started looking like this. And I started rebranding myself. I started talking to people about employment, and a lot of people wanted to talk to me about the catch I made in the 1982 Cotton Bowl, which did not necessarily help me with being hired. So I really began to resent my career as an athlete. And I really started thinking about, how do I rebrand myself? How do I get people to think about me in another way, other than the tight end who played for the Philadelphia Eagles or the tight end who played for the Texas Longhorns? So I spent a lot of time thinking about how to do that. And then I started dressing like this. I started going to things that would lead me down the path of another career. I landed at St. Stephen's. I really enjoyed working with kids. I really enjoyed education. I really enjoyed being an enrollment manager because that gave me an opportunity to give kids opportunities to come to St. Stephen's. So that was something that I really began to gravitate towards and I really began to love. I didn't think I would love anything more than playing tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles. But guess what? Once I got to thinking about the rest of my life, which I've been doing this for 34 years, it made a lot of sense to me. This is the transition. This is the next step of your life. So I've had an opportunity to travel the world. I've had an opportunity to rebrand myself. Most people don't think of me as a football player anymore. I don't think of myself as a football player anymore. I think of myself as a person who had this amazing opportunity that very few people have had in their life, and it's something I can talk about more freely now. But being in a position where I can look in the face of families, look in the face of students and say, here's some real opportunities for you educationally, to talk more about education, to have people really look at me as an educator and a person that really cares about things other than fast cars and making a lot of money. That's something that's really changed my brand and how I brand myself and how I think about myself. So going back to your self-brand, your self-identity, and how that plays out in your life, I think is the story here. And it's really important for people to realize that you have an opportunity to brand yourself. Thank you.